Anyone who has watched my series of look-back videos will know by now that I was not the biggest fan of sideways or vertical scrolling shooters. In the early days of Commodore 64 ownership and during the 80s, arcades were packed full of these kind of games, probably due to their ease of coding and development nature. There were some exceptions though, such as Area 88 by Capcom, and of course R-Type by Irem. But in 1993, I was lured in by a new siren song from Irem, and this tune was called In the Hunt. In the Hunt is an underwater themed scrolling shoot 'em up game, with its gameplay inspired by the classic shooter R-Type. The plot involves an evil organisation named the DAS, or Destroy and Slaughter. DAS are attempting to launch a super weapon over a post-apocalyptic Earth. To stop this, a submarine named the Granvia is deployed to stop the DAS and protect what is left of the planet. The game was conceived by Kazuma Kujo, who was inspired to create a water-based shooter with player-dependent scrolling and simultaneous multiplayer being its main focus. The overall concept of submarine warfare was inspired by Kujo's leisure with a water fountain. Now, what makes this game vastly different from other shooters, apart from the underwater setting, is the fact that the screen does not automatically scroll. The screen moves when the player reaches just a little beyond the anchor point located in the first third of the screen from the left hand side. And this gives the player more control when it comes to tackling tricky situations, of which there can be quite a few in this game. This slower pace of gameplay was a refreshing change for this kind of shooter. This kind of mechanic was normally used in shooters where you control a human type sprite, such as Midnight Resistance or Contra. But I have to say, it translated very well to this game, especially with the underwater setting, which creates this sense of floating as opposed to flying. The other standout of this game is obviously the visuals. The sprite work here is absolutely gorgeous in my opinion, with the main sub looking more like a comic book submarine than a real sub, and this cartoon look is extended to the explosions as well, which do look superb. And whenever a projectile is fired, you get this weak trail behind it, and when the torpedoes leave the water, the splash effect is just so impressive. And the thing I always appreciated about these visuals are the high levels of detail. I mean, everything just looks outstanding. Each enemy sprite, torpedo, explosion, they are all sprite works of art. The whole game is an absolute feast for the eyes. The sound is equally as impressive, and these tunes are some of the best tunes to appear in a game of this type. The tune for the first level is simply brilliant, and the boss tunes are superb. They really do help create a high level of tension within the boss encounters, and the other levels have really great catchy tunes, and they do not seem to drown out the sound effects, which are also amazing. I cannot stress enough the high standards this game set. You can tell Irem did not simply rush the game to market and wanted to ship a top quality product. of these great visuals and excellent sonics were packed into a game that got released into arcades at a time when 2D based gaming was making way for 3D based, polygon texture mapped gaming, and games like Virtua Fighter and Tekken were seen as the way forward. But while I agree that you have to move with the times, the technology that powered polygon arcade gaming could also be used to further enhance sprite based games to levels not thought possible just a few years prior to the release of In the Hunt. Of course, In the Hunt is an outstanding game to play, especially on 2-player, although you can experience quite a bit of slowdown with the 2-player game, so be careful. When I seen this in the arcades, there was quite a bit of buzz around it. Initially, I just dismissed it as I thought the interest was because someone was going for a high score or something. But then I seen it and I thought to myself, wow, this actually looks a bit different. And it was. While not classified as a bullet hell shooter, you could see that the extra hardware allowed for far more enemy projectiles to fly across the screen. And the screen did fill up with lots of objects to avoid. And this is one of the things that made the game challenging. I had to have a go of this before I left the arcades, and so I hung about for about 30 minutes till the cabinet became available, and I put in my 50p for a go. And while I couldn't get past the first level, I knew I would have to come back to this game and play it when I had more time. And so I did, with a mate. I told him about it in school and how I thought it was such a great game and such a departure from the other side-scrolling shooters about at the time, and he told me we simply had to go into town and play it. So we took an afternoon off from the school study periods and headed into Booth's Enterprise where I played it. We both stuck in our 50p's and had a blast. This kind of game was his forte, and with his help and a few of our Scottish pounds, we managed to get quite far. And then we had to head back to school. But I did make several trips to Glasgow to play this game and try and better it, which I never was able to do. And it was a game I never played again until I got my hands on MAME quite a few years later. It did come out on the PlayStation, but for some reason I never bought it. I think maybe my taste in games had changed, or I just couldn't see it anywhere. But it was a game I never owned. In the Hunt was met with mixed reception from critics since its initial release, specifically the home conversions. Common complaints were towards the lack of innovation and slowdown, although it was praised for its detailed graphics and gameplay. Nevertheless, it has since gained a cult following in Japan. The team behind the development of this game would go on to make Metal Slug for the Neo Geo, which used a very similar graphic style to this, to the point that today some people mistake In the Hunt for a Metal Slug spin-off, or even a Neo Geo game. But I forgive them for that, as to be fair, it would be an easy assumption to make. In the Hunt is a fantastic little game to play. In the early infancy of polygon based gaming, this game done enough to stand out from the crowds in my opinion, and while it was not universally loved at the time of its release, it is a game that has appreciated with time, and is recognised as one of the best games Irem ever produced. And I recommend anyone to have a go of it if you have the ability to do so. And that was my look back at In the Hunt, probably the best sub game I have ever played. And speaking of subs, if you liked this video, then please do give me a sub and a thumbs up, or maybe even a comment or two below about your memories of In the Hunt. And a massive thank you to all of those who have subscribed and commented on my videos. Your support really does go a long way in helping the channel grow, and I appreciate all of your feedback and support. And that's all from me, folks. Thanks for watching.